You wake up exhausted even though you slept 8 hours. You feel vaguely anxious for no reason you can name. You scroll through your phone for 40 minutes before your feet even touch the floor. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you wonder if something is wrong with you. What if nothing is wrong with you? What if something is wrong with the world you were built to live in? Here is the strange truth that researchers have been quietly uncovering for decades. The human brain is not a modern organ. It is an ancient one. And the mismatch between the brain you were born with and the civilization you were born into might be the single most underreported mental health crisis of our time. Psychiatrist and anthropologist Daniel Everett spent years living among the Piraha, a small indigenous tribe deep in the Amazon basin. What he found astonished him. Depression, as we in the West understand it, was virtually absent. Anxiety disorders, unrecognizable. The kind of low-grade chronic suffering that fills waiting rooms at every therapist's office in every major city on Earth simply did not exist there in the same form. The Piraha were not living easier lives. Their lives were physically harder in almost every measurable way. But something was different. Your brain evolved over roughly 2 million years. For almost all of that time, it was shaped by one kind of life. Small groups, constant movement, deep familiarity with a handful of people, immediate feedback between your actions and your survival, sleep that followed the sun, food that required effort to find, days filled with purposeful physical work and long social rest. That was the environment your brain was built for. And then, in what is essentially a single heartbeat on the evolutionary timescale, everything changed. 10,000 years ago, humans settled down. They started farming. Villages became towns. Towns became cities. And the pace of change, which had been nearly imperceptible for millennia, suddenly began accelerating. Then it accelerated again, and again, and again, until you ended up sitting under artificial light at midnight, staring at a glowing rectangle, wondering why you feel so hollow. Evolutionary psychiatrist Randolph Nesse calls this the mismatch hypothesis. The core idea is deceptively simple. Evolution is slow, culture is fast. And whenever the environment changes faster than biology can follow, you get suffering. You get organisms behaving in ways that made perfect sense in the old world and cause nothing but damage in the new one. Think about sugar. Your ancestors craved it because ripe fruit was rare, calorie-dense, and seasonal. The craving was adaptive. It kept them alive. Now you live in a world where sugar is added to bread, ketchup, yogurt, and salad dressing. The craving is the same. The environment is completely different. The result is a metabolic crisis. Your brain is running the same mismatch, just applied to your psychology. Take loneliness. Humans are the most socially dependent mammals on Earth. For hundreds of thousands of years, being separated from your group was not a metaphor for sadness. It was a death sentence. So your brain evolved to treat loneliness the way it treats physical pain, as an urgent warning signal, a scream from your nervous system saying, "Get back to your people." In 2018, former U.S. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy declared loneliness a public health epidemic. Studies showed that chronic loneliness carries the same health risks as smoking 15 cigarettes a day: heart disease, cognitive decline, early death. The signal your brain sends is so powerful because for most of human history, ignoring it was not an option. But now you can live in a city of 8 million people and not speak to another human being for 3 days. The warning signal fires, and fires, and fires, and eventually it starts to feel like depression. Now think about status. In a band of 20 or 30 people, social hierarchy was visible, personal, and relatively stable. You knew where you stood. You knew everyone above and below you. And your status, while it mattered, was bounded. There were only so many people to compare yourself to. Now you carry a device in your pocket that allows you to compare yourself to 8 billion people simultaneously. You wake up and within 60 seconds, you have been exposed to the most beautiful, most successful, most admired, most curated versions of thousands of other lives. Your brain runs the ancient comparison software it always has, but the inputs are catastrophically distorted. It was never designed to process this volume of social information. The result is a chronic, low-grade sense of inadequacy that has no real-world anchor. You are not actually failing, but your brain cannot tell the difference. Psychologist Jean Twenge has tracked rates of depression, anxiety, and loneliness among young people in the United States for decades. What she found is that these rates have been climbing steadily since the mid-2000s. The timing is not coincidental. It maps almost precisely onto the mass adoption of smartphones and social media. The technology did not create the vulnerability. The vulnerability was already there, wired in. The technology just found it and exploited it with terrifying efficiency. And then there is the question of meaning. For most of human history, your daily actions had direct, legible consequences. You planted, you harvested. You hunted, you ate. You built something. It stood. The feedback loop between effort and outcome was short and tangible. Your contribution to the group was visible and valued in real time. You mattered to a small number of people in ways you could see. Now you send emails into a corporation so large, you will never meet most of the people who depend on your work. You perform tasks described in the language of optimization and productivity. You contribute to quarterly goals that feed into annual projections that support a stock price that exists in a market you will never fully understand. The feedback loop is so long and so abstracted that many people cannot tell if what they do matters at all. Philosopher and social critic Ivan Illich wrote about this in the 1970s, and his words have only grown more relevant. Modern institutions, he argued, have a tendency to strip people of the very competence and agency that gives life meaning. He called it counterproductivity, when the system meant to help you instead makes you dependent and disempowered. Viktor Frankl survived Auschwitz and wrote afterward that the deepest human drive is not for pleasure or power, but for meaning. His clinical work showed that people could endure almost any suffering if they could find a reason for it. What they could not endure, what broke them, was the sense that their suffering was pointless, that nothing they did mattered to anyone. Modern surveys suggest that somewhere between 40 and 60% of workers in developed countries report feeling that their job is meaningless. Not hard, not frustrating, meaningless. That is not a productivity problem. That is not a management problem. That is what happens when a brain shaped by 2 million years of purposeful, socially embedded survival gets placed inside a system optimized for outputs it cannot feel. And here is the part that is hardest to sit with. The treatments we reach for most often, medication, therapy, productivity hacks, wellness routines, they are all aimed at the individual. They ask the person to adjust, to cope, to build resilience, to be better at living inside the system. And some of these tools genuinely help, but they leave the underlying question untouched. What if the system itself is the problem? The anthropological evidence is not saying we should all move into the forest and hunt our own food. That is not the point. The point is that certain features of the modern environment are not neutral. They are not just inconvenient, they are actively mismatched with the architecture of the human mind. And until we name that honestly, we will keep treating the symptoms without ever asking what is causing them. Sleep disrupted by artificial light, movement replaced by stillness, social bonds replaced by social media, deep community replaced by curated networks, purposeful labor replaced by abstracted task completion. And all of it, every piece of it, running on a brain that has not had nearly enough time to adapt. You feel the way you feel for a reason, not because you are broken, because you are ancient, because you are a creature of the savannah and the campfire and the small tribe, living inside an experiment that is only 10,000 years old, moving faster than any experiment should. Your anxiety is not irrational. Your loneliness is not weakness. Your search for meaning is not neurotic. These are ancient systems doing exactly what they were designed to do, firing signals into a world they were never built to navigate. When you woke up this morning, exhausted, anxious, reaching for your phone before your feet touched the floor, that was not a personal failure. That was a 2-million-year-old brain trying its best. The question is not what is wrong with you. The question is what kind of world might let you stop fighting yourself, and whether, knowing all of this, you might start building a little more of it.